Well, good morning, or afternoon, or evening. Whenever you're watching this, I hope you're going to learn a thing or two. And today's topic is not difficult. I wouldn't really say that it's one of those crazy topics, but when I gave this to some of my students, they were still confused because they didn't know which example was the most relevant, or they didn't know how many main bodies they should have because it's a hybrid topic. But it's interesting because it is about one of the most, I wouldn't say controversial, but maybe I should say one of the most problematic developments in recent human history, which is materialism. We can disagree and we can argue about this topic for a long time because some of you might think that materialism always existed. And it's not just a plague of the recent 10 years or the recent 15 years. But now, since we have social media and since there's a lot of communication between people, it just seems that it has become a problem as well. Why? Because as the topic suggests, in many countries, people increasingly talk about money, such as how much they earn or how much they pay for things in their daily conversations, like every day, regularly. Why is this a thing? What happened? Why do we talk about money so much? And is this positive or negative development? Before I explain materialism a little, let me answer the key question right now, because whenever you look at this combination over here, you start thinking, okay, do I need two main bodies? Do I need three? Do I need four? And the truth is, just like in any other IELTS essay, it's totally fine if you want to go with two main bodies. That's the most basic, the most normal thing you can do. However, if you believe you have more than one reason here, if you want to go with two reasons and three reasons, that means you can do three main bodies and four main bodies if you wish. I feel that I want to talk about two reasons. And then I feel like I need one main body for this part. So that means 2 plus 1 is 3. So most probably I'll just go with three main bodies, which makes a lot of sense for me personally. Now though, let's talk about this cultural phenomenon, materialism. And as usual, I'd like to go with the simplest explanations available. I don't want to overthink this, so let's talk about this now. Materialism is when you are too attached to the idea that money is what makes you happy or fulfilled, is what makes your life better. But you know what the truth is? To a huge extent, it is true. Because if you hear someone say, I don't care about money, I don't need money, it sounds a little irrelevant in the modern world because almost everything that's around you costs money. And if you want to live a comfortable lifestyle, then you need money. And there's no shame in admitting that. I'm just being realistic. And every day I wake up, one of the first things I think about is, how do I make money today? And I think that's normal. However, what's not normal is when that's the only thing you think about, right? We can agree on that because there's other things in life: health, hobbies, family, and friends. And that may sound too sad, or maybe that sounds too philosophical, but I still believe that there are a few things in life that you cannot buy and you cannot purchase or even loan for a particular amount of money, which includes things like good family relationships, sometimes good health, because there are many things you can buy, even in healthcare, but not everything, and great relationships with your friends, or things like respect. Some of those you cannot buy. And this is where we have the battle. Obsession with money, getting rich, right? Versus focusing on other parts of life. And there's so many examples you can make here. When I say other parts, it could be so many other things, you know. It's like you can have the best house in your city, but if you don't have the garden, and if you like gardening, you're not going to be happy. So there are many ways you can look at this topic. But when you look at how they gave it, it's like we talk about it so much as well. It's It's the amplified, increased influence of money just every single day. Even when you don't want to talk about it, somebody's going to call you and say, hey, I'm buying this or I have that and I'm buying a new iPhone. When are you buying a new iPhone? And these are the conversations that can make you feel motivated. But if you think about it, these are also the conversations that can make you feel really upset about life, because what if you don't have money? That's a very normal thought. What if you don't want to buy a new iPhone, but everybody's doing it, and now you feel like you're behind, and now you feel like you're doing something wrong? And then another thing that I would say is, this has become a social media catastrophe, because there are too many videos now when people just talk about money, and that's the only thing they talk about. Even those simple things like how much money you make on your job or how much is your car worth. And again, let me be clear, right? I like money. But with materialism, again, I will just repeat the word, right? With materialism, there are two things that can happen. Materialism impact. The impact is you can be inspired or mentally destroyed. There are many things that can happen in this very cruel life, especially when you don't have any financial support. And when you're having issues in life and just everybody around you just talks about their brand new car and their brand new iPhone and their brand new clothes, and if you don't have the opportunity to get those things, that's when life hits differently. So you don't feel inspired sometimes. You feel like, oh, okay, everybody's rich and I'm not. And everybody has money and I don't. And that is why they just gave us this question, And we have to think about culture as well, because it's not one person's issue. It's not one person's conversation or one person's debate, right? It's not the fate of just one guy. We're talking about future generations. We're talking about society, communities. We're talking about all of us, because what we talk about is what we become. It's like they say, you are what you eat. So I would say that here we can use examples of that sort, because if you just talk about money all day, that's what you represent and nothing else. So yeah, lots of things to think about. And again, I'm not trying to sound nice here, because I like the idea of getting rich. I like the idea of having a lot of money and buying super expensive cars and my favorite watch, but at the same time, again, the moment when this obsession becomes addiction or a disease, like a sickness, I think that's when your life probably is not going to be the same, because the only thing you might think about is money. So that's how I'm thinking about this topic. So there we go. Let's start. 3 main bodies. Nice paraphrasing here. Let's make this happen. And I will say the rise of materialism has changed people in a cultural sense, since now it is common for people to discuss financial matters regularly. This includes conversations related to salary and expenses. And maybe I should say this includes daily conversations related to salary and expenses. And that's when it hits daily. Just every day somebody mentions the salary and how much they make and how much they spend. Just every day. Every day is too much, I guess, for some people, because it becomes a part of life. That's why I had to mention it, because they did say daily. So why not mention it? So the rise of materialism has changed people in a cultural sense, since now it's common for people to discuss financial matters regularly. This includes daily conversations related to salary and expenses. And we can say the reasons for this are, I'm going to say that, increased living costs, because you have to think about it rationally. Everything costs money and you want to live a good life, so you need money. That's a simple conclusion here. So the reasons for this are increased living costs, and the impact of this materialistic culture, well, let's say culture, that shapes how people think. So it's the impact of materialism, the movies, the music, media. So I have to discuss the impact properly when we talk about materialistic culture in Main Body 2, for example. And the impact is mostly negative, because there are some positive things about it, it just makes you feel motivated sometimes. You want to be rich, which is good. It's good to be rich. I do truly believe that. But, like I said, the impact is mostly negative, as people are likely to become obsessed with, let's say, material possessions and values, with material possessions and values, instead of focusing on other aspects of life. It's a really detailed introduction. Many people wouldn't do this, but I like this style. Actually, if I had this in my real exam, I'd probably do the same. I would just have a very detailed introduction like this, which is okay. I'm just letting the examiner know exactly what I want to do. So it's the impact of this culture, it's the living costs, and mostly it is a bad thing, because we become way too obsessed and stressed, and we don't focus on other things in life at all, which I guess is a very normal thing to say, I think, or maybe I should say I hope many of you will agree with me, especially in Main Body 3. Main Body 1, though, is going to be about the first reason. Let's talk about living costs. Number 1, let's say in many parts of the world, living expenses, especially in cities, have risen. Some of you might be confused, like, why am I mentioning cities this way? But let's be honest. Living in a village, not all countries, but in most countries, is probably more affordable. When I say not all countries, of course, I mean that some countries like Switzerland, they have really good looking villages, and I'm sure people have very expensive houses there and lots of things to pay for. But around the world, rural areas might be more affordable. And it's mostly the cities that represent this constant struggle to get rich and to make more money to survive. That's why it's cool to say that, by the way, comma number 1, comma number 2, comma number 3, grammatically, this looks good. In many parts of the world, living expenses, especially cities, have risen. People are focused on, let's say, earning more money to pay, let's say, for rent, and let's say fulfill their basic needs. Maybe we should say such as eating food on a daily basis. And you guys know how expensive it can be to go out. I go out pretty often, and I spend a lot of money on food. Food might be my biggest expense. Of course, it's my issue as well, because I could be eating more at home, I admit. But still, it's just way too expensive. And many people would, again, agree with me here. So people are focused on earning more money to pay for rent. My bad, rent. It's not rest, obviously. I had a spelling mistake. For rent, and fulfill their basic needs, such as eating food on a daily basis. In fact, let's say, in fact, with regard to rent, in larger cities, renting even a small apartment, right, may cost thousands of dollars. And I'm saying that because we have cities like New York and San Francisco and London, which are huge, and there are a lot of people who pay a lot of money to just pay for rent. Just rent alone could be this much. And here I should say, with such financial pressures, it is I'm gonna say it's no surprise to see people discussing their incomes and expenses so much. The more living costs increase, I'm gonna say that, increase, the more people are likely to dedicate sometime every day to converse about money. Converse, as far as I remember, is to talk about, but guess what? I have Google here, so I could just say converse, meaning from the word conversation, right? Engage in conversation. Yes, converse. There we go. Talk, speak, chat. I had to use at least one synonym, so I kind of needed that. There we go. So the more living costs increase, the more people are likely to dedicate some time every day to converse about money. How many words is this? 94. And how many words was the introduction? 77. They look similar size, but trust me, main body one is bigger. So there we go. This is the first thing. And by the way, maybe I should have said in larger cities such as New York or London, this is more specific, renting even a small apartment may cost thousands of dollars, especially if it's in a good area like the center of the city. All right, let's talk about the impact of materialistic culture. What is the impact? What is the culture? Let's define everything in this second main body right over here. So I'm going to say this. Another reason why people feel, I don't want to say required, maybe I should say another reason why people discuss money regularly is the influence of materialism through various channels. Yeah, you know what? I think I should explain it this way when I say channels, because it's TV, it's YouTube, everything. Numerous television series, YouTube vlogs, podcasts, and Instagram videos are exclusively dedicated to the topic of finances. That's what I wanted to say, because maybe here, when I said the impact, or in this case, the impact, right? Maybe it wasn't clear, but now I hope it's clear. By the way, here I should say influence, because I already said impact, so a little bit of paraphrasing. So now, numerous means many, so I said many television series, YouTube vlogs, podcasts, and Instagram videos are exclusively, like fully, only dedicated to the topic of finances. There are specific terms that have become a part of everyday lexicon because of such media influence. There you go. So that's a good one, by the way, because they talked about talking, and lexicon is words you use. We can double check that as well. Lexicon, the vocabulary of a person, branch of knowledge. Yes, words you use every day, your dictionary, your word book, that is your lexicon. Am I pronouncing it right though?
Lexicon.
Yeah, lexicon is the way to say it, lexicon. Okay, so there are specific terms that have become a part of everyday life, everyday lexicon, because of such media influence. Some of the most viral clips online are, or let's say showcase people interviewing each other on the streets or outdoors. with questions about income and expenses, right? With so much, I'm going to say with so much content, people's perception of money changes. So with so much content, or with so much materialistic content, people's perception of money changes. Or should I say, gradually changes. Perception, understanding. We can double check that online as well. Perception is your understanding, the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something. Human perception, the way in which something is regarded, understood, or interpreted. Yep, for sure. There we go. So with so much materialistic content, people's perception of money gradually changes, whether we like it or not. And by the way, this is 79 words. That's okay. And you know what I'm talking about here? You know all those videos, people talking to each other on the street like, hey, how much money you make? And some kid is going to say, oh, I'll make millions. And then the older guys will watch the clip and be like, oh, wow, I'm not doing well in life because you have these young people making more money than me. That's how perception changes. And that's why I said that probably it's bad, because you just have a lot of angry people. And that's what I want to talk about here. Finally, the third main body, we talk about the impact of all of this. And I can say, as for the consequences. So as for the consequence, or maybe I should say, as for the, maybe I should say impact again. As for the impact of this development, we can say detrimental consequences are more evident. I think I can use the word evident as obvious. We can double check that. Just in case over here, evident, clearly seen, understood, obvious. Yes, we can see them better, we can see them more, basically. So as for the impact of this development, detrimental consequences are more evident. Right, with this much stress, or with this much emphasis, focus, right, on money in everyday conversations, right? People are likely to change their, I'm going to say, their priorities, and even principles. Principle, that's a good word here, because all of a sudden money can be just number one and you don't care about nothing else maybe. So with this much emphasis on money in everyday conversations, people are likely to change their priorities and principles. Instead of balancing different goals, or let's say instead of finding a balance, right, between work, friends, money, and leisure, for example, instead of finding a balance between work, friends, money, and leisure, people can focus fully on the financial aspect alone, just one thing on mind, right? I gotta make more money, that's all, nothing else. And we can say this obsession can lead to elevated levels of stress, and in some cases, I'm going to say that some cases, isolation. Because I am a workaholic too. I do work a lot. I like the idea of making a lot of money, but there are many moments when I don't go to family gatherings, or I might miss a couple of meetings with my friends just because I'm making money. And after some time, you start feeling that, am I isolating myself because I'm so focused on money? And long term, that can be a big issue if you think about it, especially considering the fact that we humans are very social in our nature. We're social creatures. We need communication, we need bonding. But when we just work and the only thing we think about is money, there might be some issues because of that. Again, long term, because when you're making money, it's a great feeling. Money is amazing. Again, remember, my position on money is very clear. But I got to be honest about the obsession part, because obsession is the word where we can talk about the extremes, as you can see. So this obsession can lead to elevated levels of stress and in some cases isolation. So we can say therefore being too invested in the topic of money, especially on a daily basis, is a negative habit that is likely to have, or maybe I should just say is a negative habit. That's all. How many words is that though? I wonder how many words I have already. 82. And how many words I have in general in three main bodies in the introduction? 338. And I feel like that is probably enough. I'm just gonna say in conclusion, comma, media influence and living and growing living expenses made people more invested in the topic. I already said, let's just say made people discuss money more frequently, more often, more frequently. So in conclusion, media influence and growing living expenses made people discuss money more frequently. Right, and here we can say this is generally a dangerous, let's say this is generally a dangerous development or tendency, we can say tendency, as there is likelihood of like, let's say, suffering from, maybe not suffering, maybe I'm being dramatic here. This is generally a dangerous tendency as there's likelihood of let's say developing an unhealthy obsession with monetary matters. And I can just stop right here. Finally, I did some nominalization because I was saying obsessed, and here obsession is the noun form, and we have monetary, which is the adjective, and now 2 sentences is enough. And overall, this will be 370 words, ladies and gentlemen. I might have a couple of spelling mistakes, please forgive me, but generally you do see 2 main bodies for reasons, 1 for the impact. My position is clear, and I do have a couple of examples like New York and London, and examples of the kinds of clips that are becoming very viral. I don't know if it's a 9 for task response. I gotta be honest here, probably an 8. Vocabulary is good and simple sometimes. It's a combination of both. Grammar is really good today. I think grammatically this has been a nice work, and cohesion seems to be just fine. So I don't want to give a score to this. I would say at least a good 8. At least a good 8. From my experience, that's how I would evaluate this essay right here. And generally, I hope you learned a thing or two again, especially when it comes to answering to this sort of a question, the hybrid type of task 2, and when it comes to understanding what materialism is and why it can be both good and bad for you. Because remember, it can be great, it can inspire you, it can make you feel more motivated to do well in life, to become rich, and just make everybody's life around you better. But today I decided to talk about the negative part because they said or, and I felt like choosing this side was easier, and explaining it this way would be more, let's say, a better choice, basically. Thank you for watching. Another video is here and completed.